Yes, okay, thank you very much. So, as Yana has already told you, my name is Victoria Kolesnik. I am MM Publication Facility Consultant for Linguist Company in Ukraine. I'm happy to see all of you here, and we will work each day of the conference. We will talk about teaching English in primary, secondary, and high school. I hope that you can use my ideas. Yes, I hope that you will find them useful and practical, and you are more than welcome to implement them in your classroom with your students. So let's add some magic in our conference. And today we are talking about how to teach values through fairy tales. So young students love to listen to fairy tales. There are many stories starting with once upon a time and ending, and they lived happily after. Reading some familiar fairy tales will engage and entertain young learners, right? So most children will have come into contact with the fairy tales in their mother tongue, yes, in their native language. So these stories can provide them with a safe and familiar context to learn a foreign language too. So when they learn a fairy tale in English, understanding the text becomes less a problem, as they already know the content, and being provided with a safe environment and context, they won't get frustrated by not understanding a word or, let's say, a phrase, right? So we can also say that fairy tales develop children's emotional well-being by teaching them morals in a context that they can understand and easily identify with. They can show them the importance of being kind, supporting friends through hardships, as well as the fundamental need to be resilient. And fairy tales enable children to work through their anxiety, build confidence, give hope, and promote emotional maturity. So children who might feel insignificant or insecure and frightened identify themselves with the hero and live through his experience. And young learners learn to deal with the difficult emotions and find a hero they can relate to. So we'll take a look at how to use fairy tales in their primary classroom and how to talk about morals which are presented in fairy tales. So we are going to talk about the benefits of using fairy tales. When a child starts learning English, it is essential that this is done in an engaging and motivating way. Most children like reading, listening, or watching stories as that's a way to explore their imagination and the world around them. And fairy tales provide children with all the necessary elements to get and keep them enthusiastic about a story. They learn more and more words as they get interested in the story. And dealing with fairy tales gives students an opportunity not only to acquire the new vocabulary, but also to find themselves in the text, in this story, to notice their own strengths and weaknesses, thus to improve their self-awareness and self-confidence. And this will lead to their personality development as well. So in other words, fairy tale is close to every human being. And there is hardly a person who, as a child, did not read wonderful stories about beautiful princesses and brave princes, or witches, or helpful animals. So fairy tales teach children, even if these lessons are given indirectly and through various symbols. For instance, after hearing a tale about the Little Red Riding Hood, a child might realize that it is better to listen to his mother. A child realizes this is not because he was told so in a tale, but because he lived through the events depicted in a tale. Like he realizes the consequences of bad behavior. He didn't listen to his parents and had some problems. And we are going to talk about the values the fairy tales teach. And we pay attention to some practical tips that you can use with your primary students, how to work with the fairy tales, some pre-reading and post-reading activities. And at the end of this session, there will be a Q&A session where you can ask me questions and I will give you the answers. So I want to pay your attention that you'll get your certificates within 2 working days. You will receive thank you letter with the feedback form for each day of the conference. And there will be the link to the folder. So please save this link in order to download your certificate. And within 2 working days, you'll get the certificate. So you need to follow the link in order to download your certificate. And I want to ask you to check your junk box as well, because sometimes you can find thank you letter there. Okay, so let's start. And let's start with the definition of a fairy tale. What is a fairy tale? We can say that it is a story about fairies and magic, usually passed down through many generations. And the term fairy refers not only to the fairies, but to the fantastic and magical setting within the story. Fairy tales, most of the time, they are traditional and passed down orally from generation to generation. And they are memorable and they continue to live in our minds long after we heard or read the classic phrase, and they live happily ever after. And I'm sure you remember many fairy tales, maybe not the details, but what they are about, and are able to retell most parts of them, even if you haven't touched a fairy tale book for ages. And this is because you were most likely happy and excited when someone read you, or when you were able to read the fairy tale yourself. So fairy tale lives in our minds for a long time, if not forever. So tell me, please, who told you your first fairy tales? Use our chat. Was it your mother or maybe your grandmother? I don't know, maybe your teacher. Speaking about me, it was my aunt. She had been working as a kindergarten teacher, so she knew lots of songs and lots of stories. And believe me, she knew how to present them, how to tell them in an engaging way. And when I was a little girl, I was happy to spend summer with her. Okay. My grandpa. Oh, lucky you are. My mom, mother. I see. My mom. Yeah, definitely. My mom and dad. Super. Sister. Yeah. Mommy. Yes, all mothers know lots of fairy tales. Granny. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So, but these stories, yes, these fairy tales are more than just happy ending. They portray real life or real moral lessons through characters. Even preschool experts say that fairy tales are important because they allow children to experience things in their minds before they experience them in the real world. And in those stories, anything can happen, but at the end of the story, there is a solution. There are no such fairy tales that end without solving the problem. Children learn that they must be a solution to how many problems you may face in your real life. And fairy tales teach children how to deal with basic human conflict or desires or relationships in a healthy way. And in all fairy tales, there are some keywords, yes, or recurrent topics. Like who is the main character? Where is he? What is his problem? So this story usually starts with a nice life, like an easy situation, and there is a climax. The moment like there is a problem and the main characters need to find their solution to the problem. And then at the end, everybody lives happily ever after. So tell me please, what are the key words or current topics in fairy tales? I will start. So there is always a prince or princess, or maybe talking animals, maybe supernatural creatures. Then, where are they? Yes, so the next question is, the story can take place maybe in the magical kingdom or in a castle, maybe in the forest or cave, somewhere not very usual, somewhere mysterious, yes? Then, who is the main character? Usually, it's a beautiful girl or brave young man, and these two are usually in love, or maybe they are a brother and a sister, and there is always someone bad, like a stepmother, yes? And a stepmother is usually depicted as a bad person, and becoming a queen or a king symbolizes independence that makes a hero safe and happy. And death in fairy tales is perceived as a failure in hero's life. And speaking about marriage, it is usually depicted as an ultimate goal of two people, just to have a partner that loves you and never leaves you. Then they often begin with once upon a time, and there is a struggle between good and evil. And at the end is usually they live happily ever after. Happiness, I see the comments, positive heroes, negative heroes. Yeah, you're right. Absolutely. Okay, let's go further. So, what values prevail in fairy tales? Think a little bit and write in the chat down below, please. Kindness, generosity, yes, you're right. Honesty, absolutely. To believe in goodness and kindness, friendship, right here. Love, happy end, love, kindness, yes. Totally agree with you. Victory of good over evil. Oh, you're very active today. Thank you very much. Honesty, love, friendship, kindness, respect. We can add loyalty, for example, or obedience as well. Courageous, generous, relationship, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. Okay, so bravery, yes. Responsibility, help. Okay, thank you very much. I totally agree with you. So it's the good and evil, honesty, obedience, kindness, relationship, friendship. Absolutely. And now let's look at the following morals and suggest the fairy tale they come from. So let's start with the first one. Appearance can be deceiving. Which story you can use to teach this? Ugly duckling? Okay. Mostly beauty. Could be. Red Riding Hood. Yeah. We can say Cinderella. She looks poor at first, but she becomes a beautiful princess at the end. Okay. Then what about Beauty and the Beast? Yeah, you're right. What about treat others as you want to be treated? Actually, many could be used. 3 pigs. We can add the ugly duckling as well. Okay, what about never be afraid to ask for help? Yeah, we can say Happy Prince. We can say Cinderella. Yeah. What about always tell the truth and have courage? Pinocchio. Absolutely, yeah. Okay. We can say that Hansel and Gretel, beginning with this fairy tale, like the kids being left in the woods to find their own way to a house made of sweets. And Gretel has to rescue her brother Hansel from the witch. And Pinocchio, do you remember how his nose would grow every time he lied? Yeah. Okay. And what about do not judge? Do not judge people at their appearance. They can be poor, but good at heart. We can say, yes, Cinderella, the ugly duckling, the Beauty and the Beast. Yes, you're right. Okay. Yes. So we can also say that fairy tales expand our students' imaginations. So a fairy tale can be defined as a story that involves fantastic forces and beings. As we have already mentioned, it can be timeless and passed down orally from generation to generation, and they allow young learners to broaden their imaginations and dive deeper into their own creativity while learning English. They expose children to different cultures, as they are often set in different parts of the world. And choosing fairy tales from around the world helps children appreciate the customs and value system of others. Yes. So fairy tales present many morals and questions that make excellent topics for debate. Is it right to steal? When is trickery okay? Yeah. And when your students listen to fairy tales, they come to know about the different problems of life and the solution of those problems in a positive way. There are no such fairy tale that end without solving the problem. They teach students that every problem has its solution, and you have to find out that solution. So fairy tales help to improve the problem-solving skill of the children, and children learn from the mistakes of characters in these stories, which helps them with their critical thinking skills. They help children connect stories to real life. They show that people face adversity, but if they believe in themselves, they can overcome these obstacles. And they can also improve vocabulary, demonstrate the structure of stories, and create a love for reading. So there are 6 well-known fairy tales in Smart Junior updated edition, such as Little Red Riding Hood, Peter Pan, Cinderella, and others. Little Red Riding Hood is a fairy tale, and like all fairy tales, there are more morals to be learned from the words of this story. So let's look at them. The first one is don't trust strangers. This is the central idea of the story. So Little Red Riding Hood does not suspect the big bad wolf intentions because he seems friendly, maybe innocent. And in this way, children learn from Little Red Riding Hood that no matter how cool a stranger may look, these strangers can still be very dangerous. And then students realize that if they talk to strangers, it may bring some troubles into their lives. Yes? Then don't reveal personal information. The story teaches children that they should they shouldn't talk about personal things with strangers, however harmless that information may seem at first. Then appearances can be deceiving. The story teaches children that even though they seem to be friendly and helpful, at the end, the big wolf just wanted to fill his belly, yeah, let's say. And caring for their elderly. Here, despite living far from her grandmother, Little Red Riding Hood and her mother prepare a basket full of different tasty goodies to give her. So this act of caring is an example for children to learn to care for their grandparents and other elderly people, learning to show love and care in different ways. And you can ask your students, do you go to visit your grandparents or other members of your family? Tell us about them. And in this way, you can touch their personal experience. And speaking about vocabulary, you don't need to systematically pre-teach vocabulary. You can arouse students' interest by showing the front cover and ask, who is this? Does the girl look sad or happy? And there are words related to animals, food, landscape, senses, and parts of the body. And you can use masks or finger puppets to bring this story to life. You can involve your students in the story as well. Get them to do voices or repeat words and sentences with you. For example, they can repeat after you, what big eyes you have. And you encourage your students to use repetitive text. Speaking about Cinderella, again, here we can see a sample of repetitive text and some vocabulary. And in modern times, most fairy tales have been adapted for children and contain simpler language. They include relatively short sentences, which is helpful when teaching beginners. So students can acquire or recall a specific vocabulary characteristic in fairy tale. Simple nouns like a princess or a kingdom, godmother, or adjectives like big, small, ugly. Yes, so obviously children learn new words from their tales, and it enriches their vocabulary. And students can easily memorize word orders, as there are many repeated words, phrases, and sentences in a fairy tale, especially when a hero has to undergo the same or almost the same trial in order to become a king or to get the prince's hand. And the same advice is said to them, and the same sentence is uttered. So it is essential to simplify the story and make it into a series of repeated patterns of language. And fairy tales, they can be used in the primary classroom in different stages of the lesson. In the beginning, as warm-up activity, or during the lesson, or maybe at the end of the lesson as a countdown activity. But the best if you base the whole lesson on a specific fairy tale, so students can get a whole picture of the story. As I have already mentioned, there are 6 fairy tales in Smart Junior Updated Edition. And when you first start working with the fairy tales, you can propose your students to find out about each fairy tale, which they will read about during the course. So you can show some cover pictures for them to guess which tale it is. Or before you read a story, you can have your students engage in a variety of prediction activities to, let's say, spark their interest in a story and give them a reason to read. And prediction activities also help develop your students' creativity and critical thinking. You can also use keywords as a warm-up activity. So you can read the keywords to guess which tale it is. And possible keywords are wolf, grandmother, forest. You see, something very, very simple. And in this way, students work in pairs or small groups to think over, discuss, and try to guess the tale. And then you reveal the correct answers by showing the picture of the tale in each case. And the good activity is 40-second fairy tale. For this activity, you need small slips of paper and a hat. And you ask your students to think of 2 names of fairy tales and put them on little slips of paper. And you collect the answers and put them into the hat. So each person, each student will pick a sleeve of paper, yeah, out of a hat, and he or she must act out the fairy tale in less than 1 minute, using only body movements without talking. And the students can mime in pairs. And there are also post-reading activities. They are a great way to continue to engage students after the story, and can be used to develop children's emotional intelligence, creativity, and critical thinking skills as well. So you can propose your students to draw a picture of their favorite character and try to present in front of class using simple structure, just simple language. You can start discussion and ask your students questions like, how does Cinderella step family treat her? Does she treat them in the same way? Why? How does Cinderella overcome her problems? Why do the animals help Cinderella? And you can say that the children do not possess enough language to discuss these questions in English. So it is important to adopt a timeout strategy where you speak mother tongue during the discussion and slowly introduce 1 or 2 new English words that reflect the main points of your discussion, and get the children to repeat these words. Or you can have them perform the fairy tale in class and give more time to get costumes or some other elements. You can also make a class fairy tale. First of all, you need to talk with your students about good and bad characters in your stories, yes, about their problems, like possible problems the main character may face. What kind of help will the main character get, or what magic is involved, or how will the story end? And to make it more fun, the students can use different characters from several fairy tales. Okay, so I hope that you find these fairy tale activity ideas useful. And I want to tell you that you have seen the pages from with fairy tales from the textbooks, Smart Junior updated edition. The components of this textbook are student's book, workbook, teacher's book, and audio. And we are working on different additional materials, like interactive materials that facilitate online learning and teaching. So there will be Quizlet cards and different online games that you can use while teaching English online, or you can use it as a home assignment for your students. What concerns, I want to show you Quizlet cards. So they are designed for each unit, And you can use these cards in classroom when you present their vocabulary. So you can do this way, yes? The children can see the word, the translation, and the visual, yeah? So it will be easier for them to remember the new words. Or they may use it to practice at home.